Hello, hello. So we're going to start our webinar now. I know this week the webinar is a little early. Most of you are teaching. Unfortunately, this week I need to leave for, I'm going to Piern for a conference. And because of the transport and my lessons, I couldn't arrange the webinar at a more convenient time. So most of you will probably be watching this later on YouTube. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to start. There we go. So we're going to do two things today in this webinar. As announced, we are going to take a look at some soft skills materials. We're going to prepare a lesson for soft skills. We're not going to do that for C2 levels. We're going to keep that for B1, B2, B2 plus levels. It's going to work with C1, C2 level students as well. Just we can expand it to more vocabulary and a bit more complex structures. But first, we're going to start with a short little lesson preparation for kids, because I had a very interesting lesson this week that I wanted to share with you. I had this week a first lesson with a new individual student, and I thought of sharing because she was a very interesting case. She's a young girl, 8 years old, who just came back a few months ago. She had lived for about 6 months in the US and had gone to school for 6 months in the US. So this is a very specific type of student. Kids of that age, I don't usually need a lot of time for testing their level, basically for assessing their needs and goals, because usually they're pretty much, their history, their experience with English is very similar. I'm well aware of what they've done or haven't done in school and what they might or might have done if they went to an English kindergarten or a kindergarten with English lessons. So I usually don't need much time with usual kids like that. But in this case, this is a typical example of a student that has developed a certain fluency because she lived and went to school for 6 months in the US. But there are a lot of questions in terms of accuracy, and it's difficult to assess exactly what she already knows, what she masters, and what we need to work on. As she's lived in the US, everything that she's acquired from the US, I do not want to break the fluency of that by working too much on accuracy. It can confuse a student. I would take the example of myself. I mean, I am Belgian, but we moved to Canada in the States when I was a little boy, before I even started school. So all the English that I learned there was very fluent. I acquired the language in a very natural way. And my parents told me at that young age, I actually chose a language. Between French and English, I chose English. As I was a kid there, everything was going on in English. All the friends that I could make at school, everything was in English. So I kind of chose English as my primary language. I didn't know much about the rules. I didn't know anything really about accuracy or anything. When you learn a language like that, you really acquire the language, and I didn't want to break my student in that way. So this 8-year-old girl, it was a first lesson. I wanted to build a solid lesson for her that was both useful and informative to me. I wanted to get as much information from that first lesson as to what she already masters and what we can improve, what we can work on. So this is what I did. Firstly, as a warmer, we went with a pronunciation exercise. It was a very good way for me to hear her pronunciation and play with tongue twisters to see what she understood and didn't understand. So I went directly with a pronunciation exercise of B1, B2 level. I'm going to show you this one. I went with number 6. There we are. I'm going to show you this one. I really love this one. There we go. It's a very good pronunciation exercise because first exercise focuses on a very natural conversation, and it works on the questions. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? You can pronounce it at different speeds, and the students can play with that. Where are we going to go? 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 I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? I don't really want to go. I don't really want to go anywhere. I don't really want to go anywhere. So we had a little fun with this dialogue, and with exercise 2, a very good tongue twister for the. This is a sound that typically is difficult in English. Theodore thought Nathaniel threw the third thing. Theodore thought Nathaniel threw the third thing. Theodore thought Nathaniel threw the third thing. It's good fun, and you need to say it 3 times fast. So we first had a little fun with that, and I was able to listen to my student, what she understood and how well she pronounced these. And then we had fun with the funny voices repetition. I've shown this before. This is a great little activity. It just gives you cards that you can use repeatedly with all our pronunciation exercises. So you cut these out in cards, and the student takes a card. For example, the first student's pirate, arr, arr, and they need to pronounce, well, they need to do the pronunciation exercise mimicking a pirate. It's loads of fun, and students can play with the language. It's a good way to engage the student. Another objective of my lesson, of course, an 8-year-old girl. I'm an old man. I know it can be scary for students that age. One of the objectives of the first lesson, of course, is to build a bond. So that was a perfect way to make something useful and engaging. And I had to guess what funny voices she was making. So we didn't use all of them. We stuck with 6. She did pirate, frog, ghost. I remember president as well. Witch. She did witch. Theodore thought Nathaniel. President. She was very serious. Theodore thought Nathaniel threw the third thing. So we started our lesson with that. It was a short 45-minute lesson. And we started with our pronunciation exercise. So tongue twisters, practicing with practicing questions and speed, and then the funny voices. And that gave us a very engaging and very useful beginning of a lesson. And then I find with fluent speakers, a good way to assess their language is with comparatives. So I just got a message that you can't hear anything. Is this true? No, I see my sound. You might want to check if you've got the sound on your computer. I'm not muted. And I see that my microphone, when I speak, I see the waves. So I'm assuming it should be on your end. I'll assume it's on your end because I see on my microphone, I see the waves. All right? Send me a message if you still can't hear me. So moving on, a great way I find to do something useful for the student and informative for me, the teachers. My first lesson, I went with comparatives. Why? Because comparatives, well, there are a lot of different levels that we can play with comparatives. We can do comparatives, the basic, good, better, the best. I was going to say good, better, the worst. Good, better, the best. Happier, happier, the happiest. And then we can move on to different levels of comparisons. So it's much better. It's a little better. It's not as good. They're really different levels. And playing with these comparatives, I wanted to assess how much she knew, how much she had learned, how much she had picked up in the US. So what I did, I had stuffed animals. I didn't think of bringing them here. We have stuffed animals in our school. So a little teddy bear, a rabbit. There's a dog, a cat, a tiger. So we played with these, and I just used these to assess her knowledge of comparatives. And then what I did, there we go. I had printed these comparative flashcards for automation. This is a great material. You have 4 documents of flashcards for comparatives. So check it out. So these flashcards are great because you can cut them. You have a picture and an adjective. And what you can do with these, you can cut them so that you have both the picture and the adjective, and you can play all the flashcard activities that we've shown you loads of times to build up fluency with vocabulary. So match in memory, of course, for P1s to associate them. But the card flips, the grab game, things like that, we played that, and she tried as fast as she could. So angry, angrier, and the angriest. Bad, worse, the worst. Big, bigger, the biggest. You can also cut these cards so that you only have the picture. I'm probably going to surprise her at her second lesson with these flashcards, but only the pictures. And I'm going to see how much she remembers and how she associates the pictures to the adjectives. And again, we're going to practice the comparatives. You can use these flashcards as well to actually make sentences. And we did exactly that. We used the flashcards with the stuffed animals to make sentences. And there again, I assessed whether she was going to simply use, oh, well, the cat is bigger than the dog. Or whether she was going to make, the cat's a little bigger than the dog. The cat's much bigger. So when she said, this is more difficult, I said, is it a little more difficult or is it a lot more difficult? And she naturally responded. I was very pleased. I know that I can do comparatives at a higher level. And we followed that, of course, with, I love this production activity. Where is it? The card game of, there we go. So you have Monster Combat right here, and there's a second one, Robot Combat, right there. See? Both of them are here. Monster Combat here, Robot Combat right underneath. So let's take a look at Monster Combat. The idea, they're exactly the same. The cards are different. Come on, load. The principle is very simple. On each card, there's going to be a robot, or here, in this case, a monster. We're taking a look at Monster Combat. On each card, there's going to be a monster, a picture, and a name, and also characteristics. Check it out. Come on, load. So there will be different characteristics on how smart they are, how strong they are, how fast they are, how scary. I mean, they're monsters, so there's going to be scary, I'm sure. There you go. Intelligence, speed, dreadfulness, strength, weirdness, fearlessness, spite, size. And you have adjectives to go with these because the students might need some inspiration. So smart, stupid, fast, slow, scary, cute, strong, weak, weird, boring, fearless, cowardly, mean, nice, large, small. And as you can see, each of these has a weight, a score. So intelligence, Aquazog has 43 in intelligence, but 25 in speed, 87 in dreadfulness. So what happens? So you cut these into cards, and you can either distribute them all to the students, or you can have a pile, like you play a bit like Go Fish. What's going to happen is we're going to simply combat two of our monsters in turns. So if it's my turn, for example, I have my pile of monsters, you have your pile of monsters. If it's my turn, I take my first card, and for example, it's Aquazog. You take your first card, and yours is, for example, this one, Terrafer. If it's my turn, I make a sentence. So I'm going to say something like, well, Aquazog, what's good with, I see strong dreadfulness, strong spite, and weak speed. So I can either say something like, I think my monster is scarier than yours, or I can go the other way. I can go with something very weak. I think my monster's slower than yours. Only one sentence, okay? I can only choose one. So for example, I say, hey, you know what? I think my monster is slower than yours. I have speed 25. You look at yours, you have speed 78. Is my statement true or false? My statement is true. My monster is slower than yours. So I win, I get your monster, and now it's your turn. We both pick the next cards in our pile. So for example, my next card is Sleazy, yours is Webclaw. It's your turn, and it's your turn to make a sentence. So you look at your monster, wow, dreadfulness 93. So you say something like, I'm sure my monster is scarier than yours. And again, you can play this with different levels of comparatives. You can encourage your students to say, I think my monster is way scarier than yours. I look at mine. Mine is at 91. So is your statement true or false? If we played with simple comparatives without weighing them, if you just said my monster is scarier than yours, you win, you get my card. But if you said, if we were playing with grading comparatives and you said, I think my monster is way scarier than yours, actually, you know what? 91, 93, that's not true. That's not true. I win, I get your card. We continue like that. This is a great production activity. It's loads of fun. Kids have loads of fun comparing their monsters. They read the names, they look at the pictures. It's very engaging. They really don't realize that they're practicing their comparatives. So we're going to start soft skills now. Just before soft skills, this happened to me during the week. This 8-year-old student, an 8-year-old girl who had lived in the US for 6 months, who had been to school in the US for 6 months. So I wanted to share this lesson plan with you because I found it was very useful to her. It was very engaging. She loved it. At the beginning of the lesson, she was a bit shy. Her parents weren't sure. Scary old man with a beard. Oh my God. It can be, it was natural for her to be a little nervous. But with this lesson plan, it was very useful to her. The parents were very happy because it was useful. She engaged in the lesson very quickly. She really got into it very quickly. It was fun for her. And as I said last, this was my first lesson with her. So it was very informative to me to see really what she had picked up in the US and what we could work on in future lessons. Ta-da! So let's start soft skills. So as you see, I just reset my filters, and you remember these filters, there are different ways you can use them. I find them really useful to quickly filter out activities and find what I need. Age range, Level of difficulty, remember in level of difficulty, you also have exams. The target language, type of activity, P1, P2, P3, productions, projects, presentation support. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at skills, because in skills, we have our classic skills like exam preparation, fluency, functional language, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. But you see there are other things, writing, testing, teaching tips, and we have something called soft skills here, as well, advanced communication skills as well here. So we're going to take a look at that. First, going to start filtering only advanced communication skills, only soft skills. It's very nice. You'll see here that the topics, you can use these in a lot of different ways as kind of projects, reading activities, and very importantly, fluency, developing speaking skills. I wanted to start with a soft skill that I really like and that can be used for, first of all, for much lower levels. A lot of these soft skills you'll see are filtered out at C1 or C2 even. But there are soft skills we can start working on already at B1, B2 level. And you'll see the first one I want to show you also has some kind of consequences. We can work on, we can use these to help students develop their grammar as well. I want to show you, there we have it, negative questions. So remember again, I'm repeating, the filters work this way. You can use the filters. You can also use these tags. You see, when you click on tags, it'll add to the filter. So here I see negative questions I want to add, and I just click it and it filters out. So only 2 activities for negative questions, but you'll see they're very, very powerful. So I open first the P1, okay? Negative questions, basic practice. And you see that we have 4 separate documents. So you can spread these out throughout your course. Let's take a look at the first one. So I want to start with this one because this is not a difficult soft skill lesson. We're going to focus on the simple fact that not all questions are simply requests for information. And this is very important. In real life communication, questions are really not simply a request for information a lot of the time. For example, negative questions are an interpretation. Negative questions are much less open-ended. What we want to do here is stress on the fact that there is a meaning, there is an implication when we ask negative questions. So here are a few examples that you can use for your presentation in class. Don't you know him? If I ask you, don't you know him? You're supposed to understand, I think you know him. And if you don't, I'm kind of surprised. Don't you know him? Tom Wiseman, don't you know him? I know it's usually me at the webinars and things like that, but Tom is my a partner. We do everything on resource education together. Don't you know him? Wouldn't you do that? Another example, that's a would example of a question where I'm implying that I'm sure you would do that in this situation. If you had, coming back to the first part of my webinar, if you had a young student, a kid, who had spent some time in a native English country like England, America, Australia, maybe, I don't know, wouldn't you follow a similar lesson plan than I showed you? I'm implying that I'm sure you would do that. Or I can ask a positive question, would you follow the same lesson plan? Here I'm asking for your feedback. Wouldn't you do that? Is more of an implication. Isn't it great? It's a typical question. I'm just asking for you to confirm, or I'm stating what I feel about it. Now, it's important as well, there's a short example as well that you should remember, students should remember that if you contradict what someone thinks is true, as expressed in a negative question, they will probably act surprised. You're shocking them in a way. So there's a conversation like this. Isn't this ice cream great? No, actually, I've had better. Are you insane? This ice cream is the best. Haven't you had Uncle Joe's cookie crumble ice cream? Yeah, but it's been a while. Trust me, Uncle Joe's cookie crumble is better than anything you've ever tasted. So this is a nice little example of a very natural dialogue where we have two negative questions. First, A, let's call him Alan. First, A, Alan is implying, isn't this ice cream great? He believes this is a wonderful ice cream, and he believes B, Bob, he believes Bob loves this ice cream as well. He's sure he will. No, actually, Bob's not sure. And then Bob goes like, wait, haven't you, I clicked. Haven't you had this other flavor? Same thing. Bob is sure that A, Alan has already tried it. Let me get back to the first page. So this is, on the first page, you have a way to introduce a presentation with examples. On the second page, it's loading, there we go. Two very good P1s to practice this a bit further with your students. And again, it's a very cunning way to practice questions again. Students need this extra practice with questions. So the first exercise is very simple. Write down what you understand the speaker believes with these negative questions. Isn't Harry a great guy? You're implying Harry's great. Don't you have a minute? I'm sure you can help me right now. You have a minute, right? Didn't you call Veronica? I asked you to call Veronica. I'm sure you did. I'm just checking. Haven't you already talked to Phil, etc. So students here are just writing down what they think the speaker believes when they're asking them this negative question. And then exercise 2, students take a bit more responsibility now. They want to imply the following things, so they should come up with a negative question. This soup is terrible. Isn't this soup just awful? Isn't this the worst soup you've ever had? The story was interesting. Wasn't that the best story? Wasn't that the most interesting story you've ever heard? Wasn't that story interesting? So students can play with it. Of course, at B1 level, what you're going to see is mainly students just reversing the statement, this soup is terrible, isn't this soup terrible? If you're confident your students can play with it, try to encourage them to go a bit further, to play a little bit with it, as I did. So this soup is terrible. You could have a negative question, something. Isn't this the worst soup you've ever had? And students play with the language. I really love this. And let me show you, there's a third page. Now, on the third page, we give you a writing exercise because it's very good, I found, for students to think about it. We're going to give them a letter from, so in this case, each of the 4 documents that I showed you that you have in this activity, you'll have this exercise 3 with a different prompt. So in this writing, look, students have to respond to the following letter from their neighbor. Be sure to reply to all of the implied meaning. Neighbor, didn't I tell you to turn down the music at night? Haven't you heard what I do when I am angry? Will you never realize that it's best for you to listen to what I say? Best, your friendly neighbor. Extremely friendly neighbor. The students should write a reply to that email. Let me show you another one. Let's have a look at number 3. As soon as it opens. My connection says it's there we go. So you see, here again, you have exercise 1, exercise 2. Oh, no, there's no writing in this one. Same idea. I remember there's writing in exercise in the 4th one. There we go. So again, exercise 1. What do you understand from the negative question? Exercise 2, make a negative question. And on page 2, we have a writing exercise. Again, respond to the following email from a coworker this time. Be sure to respond to all of the implied information. The student can choose to be either constructive or defensive. Dear Antoine, you missed the meeting this morning. Didn't you get the email reminder? Hasn't the boss talked to you about this sort of thing? Won't you agree to help me on my project now? Let me know. Best, James. Very forward. So again, I can be defensive, I can be constructive. So you see, first, we give you 4 separate activities that you can use in class for homework, and you can spread these out during your course. And let's get back to this. Now let's look at, so there's a P3. There are no P2s for most soft skills, advanced communication skills, because automating, building reflexes is really about hard skills. We're building reflexes when we make sure, as for me in Russian, for example, I need to make those cases automatic. If I'm always thinking about the cases when I'm speaking, I'll never get that fluency that I aspire. So let me show you a P3. I love this one. It's really great. And again, you see a lot of different cards for you to use. This speaking activity is called Are You Saying? So it's going to be very simple. This activity gives students the chance to interpret and respond to negative questions in the course of a regular conversation. It's very important to have that in the course of a regular conversation.
Слушай, я не знаю, что с ним делать, но я не знаю, драться, что...
I hear someone.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries. So it's very important that students start off with small talk. You want to use these negative questions in natural conversation. If you don't know how to start small talk, I highly recommend taking the building dexterity cards. You can easily find that on our website. You go back to materials and you search for dexterity, building dexterity. On building dexterity activities are cards with words. It can be really nouns, adjectives, verbs, it depends. And we use these, check it out in the instructions of building dexterity. There'll be a link to a video. We use these to start conversations. So take a look at that if you don't know how to start a small talk. So first, students start off with small talk. As I said, it may be useful, it might be helpful to give them a situation or topic around which to base their conversation. And then throughout the conversation, so each student has taken 2-3 negative question cards. They must use these questions during the conversation, and the partners should correctly interpret and respond to the negative questions as they can. Let me show you some examples. It's a lot of fun. Isn't your neighbor some sort of criminal? Don't you want to take a nap or something? Don't you have some sort of strange hobby? Haven't you always hated learning new things? So these negative questions are surprising, shocking. They're very much in the P3 vein, because the whole point of P3s, remember, is to shock our students, to push them to spontaneously react, to use what they master. So these are a bit surprising questions. Didn't you tell me you were going to pay me back today? Didn't you say I could stay at your place for a few weeks? Isn't it your favorite kind of weather today? It's January in St. Petersburg. You wouldn't believe the weather. It's definitely not my favorite kind of weather today, all right? Isn't today your birthday? Well, actually it isn't. I don't know why you thought it was my birthday. I was born in September, actually, so January is very far. It's a lot of fun, and again, students can play on different kinds of reactions, being defensive, being constructive. So there you have it. these negative questions are a great way to complement lessons you're already having at B1, B2, B2 plus, C1, C2 level. Use the P1s, spread them out throughout your course. It's a great way for your students. Your students will review questions without it seeming like you're just reviewing, and you're bringing them something new, a new interpretation, a new soft skill, a new communication skill, and at the same time, you're reviewing a hard skill. And you've got great speaking activities to follow that up with. So that's the first soft skill I wanted to show you, negative questions. And any questions, comments on this one? No? I'm checking the chats. No questions, no comments on negative questions. I hope you agree. It's very useful, very practical, very engaging. And again, what Tom and I are always about, it's simple to implement and it's flexible for you, the teacher. So moving on from negative questions, I wanted to go a bit further because, as we said, negative questions are used to imply things. There's an implication behind the negative question. And we can go a bit further in this. There's another advanced communication skill or topic. This is called implying in English. So here you see you have more activities. So we have 2 P1s, no P2s again. All right, this is not something, it's not a hard skill. It's not something we can automate. We can't build reflexes with this. We can help our students be more comfortable with it and master it, but it's not really building reflexes. It's not something that is a simple formula that you can just automate in your brain. It's not a hard skill, it's a soft skill. Students are going to need to play with it at P3 level over a few lessons. So we have 2 P1s, we have 2 P3s, and a production activity. Now, let me differentiate the 2 P1s first. So again, this is something you can start working on. Students don't have to be C1, C2 level for this. B1 might be a bit too early. That's why we've labeled this soft skill as B2 plus. B1 might be too early because implying in English, there's a lot of work on present perfect. And at B1 level, the students might not be comfortable yet with present perfect enough to play with it in that way. So check it out. I'm going to start first with the brainstorm activity P1, because this is a great way to start to introduce implying in English. Let's check out the instructions first. So as you see, again, the instructions. So the worksheet is very simple. It's a one-page worksheet that I'll show you after. That will show the students 3 different social situations, and for each social situation, the students are going to brainstorm different ways they can imply things. So it can be group 1 at a time. It can be group competition. Group 1 at a time. You give students a sentence and a task. How can you say, I don't like that restaurant politely? And students have 1 minute to come up with answers. After that, students discuss their answers and vote on whose they like the best. It can be a group competition. If some students are weaker than others, if you see that you have some students that are naturally good with soft skills, you might want to place students in groups with someone very strong, that's already very natural at soft skills, and someone who's a bit weaker. And that way, the stronger student will guide and will inspire the other student. So in group competition, you give the students a sentence and a task. How can you say, I don't like that restaurant politely? Students have 1 minute to come up with as many answers as they can. For each answer that fulfills the task, has to actually be polite. The students receive a point, and you keep score of the rounds. So let me show you the brainstorm situations. There we have it. So we have 3 social situations. All right. Situation 1, you're with the Queen. You're really, tell the students they're at Buckingham Palace for whatever reason. I mean, they have just become super successful, and the Queen has invited them for a meal at Buckingham Palace. Situation 2, you'll see you see as in the picture, you want to say something a bit offensive, Joe is stupid. And situation 3, we're going to talk about job candidates. So situation 1, someone asks you what you think of the soup and you want to say you hate it. A, you're talking to a waiter, waitress, and you're in a bad mood. Waiter, waitress, okay, this soup is terrible. Please return it. Please exchange it, or please reimburse me, or whatever. There are different ways. At this level, you're in a bad mood, so you might not be that polite. You're talking to your best friend. Your best friend, I mean, you don't want to offend them, and they probably spend a lot of time preparing the soup just for you. That's going to be another level of formality and familiarity. You're talking to the Queen. She's invited you, as I said, to Buckingham Palace. And here, it's compared to B, it's a completely different level of formality, but also familiarity. You can't be familiar with the Queen. Situation 2, you want to say that Joe is stupid. Situation A, you're talking to Joe's mom. B, Joe is your boss. You're talking with your coworkers. You want to be careful of what you say here, and you never know what might get back to Joe, your boss. C, you're talking to your girlfriend, to your friend, Joe's girlfriend. See, here she loves Joe, but she's your very good friend. You kind of want to let's keep this party. Let's keep it a girls' party, okay? Let's not invite boyfriends because, well, basically, Joe, you could do better. Oops, you could do better. I didn't mean, well, it's a lot of fun. Students will have a lot of fun with that. Situation 3, you want to say, I'm a good candidate for this job, the best, in fact. Situation A, you're in the middle of the interview. So you want to imply it in a subtle way. B, you're not very confident in what you're saying. And C, you're talking to your parents and you want them to be proud of you. So this is a nice little brainstorm activity that leads to implying in English. I always start with that one. The second P1 here all of a sudden deals with strategies and exercises. So as you start, the first P1 is a very good lead to this soft skill of implying in English. So implying in English, here strategies, you have 2 PDFs. One that I would keep for higher levels, this one. This one has a long text that we wrote to explain different strategies and why it's important to imply in English. And there's some very good expressions, test the waters, pointers, puts you in a box. The first exercise you'll see in this document is going to be a vocabulary to see how well students understood the meaning of these expressions from context. And you have different strategies. So the whole idea is to give you an emergency exit, to make sure that you don't offend people. Implying in English gives you this emergency exit. And there are different ways. You can use conditionals, for example. Instead of saying you should find a new job, if I were you, I'd find a new job, you know. Another way to imply, another strategy, second page. There we go. Present perfect, perfect tenses. Actually, I said present, but it doesn't, all perfect tenses imply. It can be future, it can be past perfect. Any formulation of have plus V3 is loaded with implications. If you want your conversation partner to think a certain way about you, but you don't feel it's appropriate to say directly, imply it. So for example, I like this example. Bill is on a date with Cassandra. Now, Bill looked at Cassandra's online profile before the date and found out that she likes exciting activities, such as traveling to strange parts of the world, rock climbing. So does Bill. But it's a date. I mean, Bill doesn't want to just say directly, hey, you know what? We like the same things, and I think we're a good match, and we'll have lots of fun together. On a date, you can't just say directly things like that. We're not robots. Bill wants to imply it so that Cassandra feels that. It's not just logical, it's emotional. And so in the conversation, he can point to things like that and say things like, well, you know what? I've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro 3 times now. Oh, a future perfect example. You know what? I'll have saved enough money for Mount Everest by next summer. Why did I leave my last job? Honestly, because my boss had told me that I couldn't get more free time to go on vacation and travel. And that's really what I'm all about. And you see, all these examples of perfect tenses imply what Bill wants to say is that, you know what, Cassandra, we're perfect. We'd be perfect together because we like the same things. He's implying this. Another strategy, minimize through negation. This is a lot of fun. The word but, we call it the great negator. So there's a very natural, very fluent way of implying criticism in English is to say a very positive thing first, follow that with but, and finally say what you really want to say. We explained as well, in the American South, there's a very common expression, bless his heart, followed by but, and then some kind of assessment of the character intelligence, as in, bless his heart, but that boy can't read. It's a very natural way of speaking. So I'll quickly show you third page. The third page of this document is a conclusion. Again, there's more on negation. So for example, instead of saying the soup is bad, you'll say the soup isn't great. Negation helps in that way. The movie was terrible. It wasn't great. And a conclusion and exercise 1, from context, what do you think these mean? Vary, test the waters, pointers, very good activity, but we'll move quickly ahead because that's not what we wanted to talk about today. Soft skills. So we're already on page 4, and here we have exercise that we can use in class to practice these things. And you can use these in different ways. You'll see the first exercise, we focus on different strategies one by one. So the first one, you see the first page here, we're focusing on perfect tenses for implying in English. And you don't need to construct your lesson solely around the soft skill. So you can have a soft skill lesson where you'll follow all these exercises and you'll play on perfect tenses, conditionals throughout one lesson. Or what you can do throughout your course, throughout your curriculum, you can feed your students regularly these activities when you're studying perfect tenses, when you're studying conditionals. It'll give a new dimension to your class, to your lesson, that is really, really very interesting. So here, perfect tenses. What are the implications of the following statements? Again, first, the students don't produce. First, the students think about the implications. I've seen better days. Well, this person is sad and going through a tough time. It can be professional. They got fired. There's a new boss. There are a lot of implications that can be understood here. It can also be personal, something to do with their family, with their personal life. They just had a bad breakup. I've seen better days. You want students to think about that. And try to encourage your students to think of more than one situation. because they shouldn't take this soft skill as as reading too much directly into what people say. When you're trying to read implications, you want to stay open-minded. The idea is to have a few options. What is going on here? You want to understand what the person is saying, what the person is implying. She's always tried to avoid new things. We'll have spent a lot of time together. I like this one. We'll have spent a lot of time together, for example. It can imply both negative and positive things. You know, I don't know about going on a holiday together for a whole month. You know, I think we'll have spent a lot of time together, and we've only been on 3 dates. I think it's a bit soon. So here I'm implying something negative. It might not be a good idea. I can also say the same thing, but in a very positive way. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. My girlfriend and I, we're going to go on this holiday together for a month. And, you know, because of my work and my travels, well, my business trips, all these conferences, really, we haven't spent much time together. So I'm really looking forward to this holiday. We're going to reconnect. We'll by the end, we'll have spent so much time together. It's going to be wonderful. Implying two very different things. So start with exercise 1, students play and think about the different implications possible with these statements. And then exercise 2, here they have to produce the half plus V3 form. You want to get them to imply the following using a half plus V3 form. I have to go now. Well, hasn't this been lovely? It sounds very positive. I love expressions like this, and you'll hear them from native speakers. This is very natural. Hasn't this been lovely? It's a very polite, very positive way of kind of implying, I gotta go. It's been lovely, but by using a perfect form here, I'm not saying it is lovely. I'm saying it has been lovely, and I'm implying we should finish this. I can't spend time with you tomorrow. I'm unhappy with my neighbors. I'm annoyed at this song. Haven't you heard this song like 10 times on the radio in the last hour? I was hungry, and that's why I didn't do well at the meeting. I don't have time to talk right now. The students, and there's not one right answer. The students now are going to play, and they're going to produce half plus V3 form to try to imply these things. So again, as I said, it can be an entire lesson on implying in English, or you can spread these out and feed these to your students throughout the course. This page I would keep for when I'm doing perfect tenses with my students. It's a great way for students to feel perfect tenses. Because let's face it, perfect tenses, sometimes if you're following a textbook or something like that, sometimes perfect tense lessons are very heavy on the students. They can get frustrated. Page, I think we're already on page, yes, page 5. Page 5 is devoted to the conditionals. Use conditionals to be less direct with the following opinions. You should shut up and listen sometimes. Wouldn't it be lovely if we could hear birds chirping right now? You should have called the police. If I were you, so an easy way to do all these is if I were you. If your students are at C1, C2 level, I recommend telling them that if I were you is forbidden, so that they play a bit more. Or you can only use if I were you once in this exercise. And then we move on to, again, more active exercises. So exercise 4, you're at a job interview, you get the following question: why are you leaving your current job? What do you not like about it? Again, this is a great exercise for students, adult students, maybe teenagers, leading them towards university, job interviews, things like that. This is a very good question, a very typical question for a job interview. And This is something this is a typical example of a situation where in English you want to imply things. Okay, you want to imply because you don't want to be critical of your former boss, for example. I mean, it's your potential future boss interviewing you. So if you're too critical of your former boss, your potential boss, future boss, might hesitate on hiring you. So different ways you can imply why are you leaving your current job. Page 6 and 7. Page 6 and 7. This is on using negatives. So use the positive adjectives to imply something negative. Exercise 6, complete the beginnings of these opinions. But this suit is not your best. But I don't know why the real estate agent showed us that apartment. Blah, 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 blah. And finally, last page, a writing exercise. This is a very, very good one. Imagine this, you just stayed at a bed and breakfast. The owners were an incredibly nice old couple. They were hospitable the entire time and they really took care of you and your family. You had a lovely time thanks to them. However, there were a few problems with your stay. The room smelled bad. The room was cold at night. There was mold in the bathtub and the TV didn't work and nobody fixed it. You want to write a comment for their comment box, but be nice about it, okay? As we said at the beginning, the owners were an incredibly nice old couple. You want to come back, and the place is small enough that they will know the review is from you. So you don't want to offend them. You want them to be happy when you come back, and at the same time, you want to give them constructive criticism because you care, so that they improve their bed and breakfast. So in this comment section, you can change the exercise to being an email actually as well. In this comment section or email, the students are going to imply things. They're going to imply these 4 things as politely and smoothly and gently as they can. Oh, sorry, coming back. So as I said, I love this P1. I showed you first the first one, implying in English, which is it's a 7-page document that is basically, you can make an entire lesson out of this. If you're going to spread these out throughout your course, we also included a second document that can be for homework in the first case, or it's just more materials that you can spread out throughout your course. All right? More activities focusing on perfect tenses, on conditionals, on all this implying in English. An answer example for the bad smell in the room. So it was about that last activity where, about the extremely nice old couple. How could I imply that the smell was bad? Well, you know what? I really loved waking up every morning in your bed and breakfast. It was really lovely. The view was fabulous. The bed was very comfortable. And here's where I am going to imply using a perfect or a conditional or maybe a negative. Now, now the room was very fresh, but the smell could have gone better. Have you thought about putting some fresh flowers in the rooms every morning? I'm implying, why would I want flowers every morning? For the nice smell. If I were you, I'd get some scented candles to add to the atmosphere. You see what I'm doing here? I'm implying that they could improve my wonderful little morning in their bed and breakfast with scented candles, flowers, things like that. So, as I said, implying in English, we have 2 more P3s. The first one is called oblivious, offended, accepting. So this is a dice based one. Student A and student B are going to have a quick conversation. Student A takes a card. He or she must tell her partner about the situation in a way that is careful, and student B rolls a dice to determine their reaction. They can be oblivious, don't care. They can be offended. They can be accepting, oh really, and try to correct. And we have 2 sets of cards for you. There you go. So the cards, for example, is something like, well, tell your partner that his or her girlfriend, boyfriend is no good for him or her. Make your partner understand that his or her clothes are not good for formal occasions. Try to make your partner understand that he or she isn't a good listener. You see with these cards, each card, student A tries to say this to student B, and student B rolls a dice to determine their reaction. Another P3, and this one is similar to sugarcoating, is called soften the blow. Again, similar, you have bad news cards that you need to deliver, and the students are going to react. Give your partner the best news. The police are investigating him or her. The price of chocolate has increased by 300%. And last thing, I've got a lesson starting soon, but don't worry. Last thing, a production activity. It's called partnered crime. I love it, and students love it. It's loads and loads of fun. Partner in crime. What students are going to be doing here, basically, wait, up. So we're looking for a situation where students don't want to be too direct about what they have to say. So student A takes a crime card. He or she wants to commit that crime. He or she wants to recruit student B to be a part of the operation. But you don't want to be too direct about it. A should mention the business indirectly, as B could be wearing a wire, could be a goody two-shoes, wants to stay out of trouble, or last, C, interested but cautious. So in order to decide B's role, again, you roll a dice. 1, 2, he's wearing a wire. So the student B can react by trying to get student A to confess more. 3, 4, goody two-shoes, never does anything bad. No. Whatever they understand, they refuse. Or interested but cautious, try to find out more. The crimes are fun. We're not going too serious. So let me show you some of the crimes. Oh, this is just for the situation. There. Let me make them bright. You want to cheat the lottery. You want to steal some TVs from a big warehouse. So you want to imply it, and it's really loads of fun. Students have lots. They play very well with this, and they have an ideal situation where they're supposed to imply without being direct. You want to start a Ponzi scheme with a new type of cryptocurrency. Lots of fun. All right. I'm going to end our webinar on this note today. I have a lesson starting soon. Again, what we did today, very quickly went over a lesson plan I used this week with an 8-year-old girl who had lived in America for 6 months. So I wanted to assess her fluency. And then soft skills, negative questions, either one lesson or spread out throughout the course, and then implying in English, same thing, either a lesson or spread out throughout the course. I hope you found it very useful and you saw how engaging it is for students. Feel free to send me by email or on social networks any questions, or you remember, you can also use the messaging system in here. Okay, if you click on messages, there you go, compose. And in recipients, I'm the first one there, all right? So don't hesitate, write if you have any questions about these. I'm gonna go to my lesson. Good luck with your lessons today. Enjoy the weekend. And talk to you next week. Next week, I've planned to talk probably about writing. All right? Bye-bye, everyone. You too. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.